Hello, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Red, the kettle corn of Husker Fan Podcast, where we try to be sweet, but at times we get salty. I am your host, Ken.
And I am your other host, Scott.
And here's the intro video. We are the kettle corn of Husker Fan Podcast, as I said earlier. Don't need to say that again, right? We're a proud member of Herd Out Sports. I have just recently got some mock-ups that I shared with Scott for some hopefully future merch that we're going to be putting out, and they look really cool. Going to be available in multiple colors, so we're really looking forward to that. And I've got a hair tickling my nose. Live stream.
That is the worst.
Oh God, it's just awful. I know I'm going to sneeze eventually, so forgive me, everybody, when I do.
You gave them to me. I noticed a long hair on my ear the other day.
Yeah.
It was like, and I don't know how I missed it because I'm always like looking at my face, looking for blackheads, looking for ingrown hairs, blah, blah, blah. And then I see this hair because it keeps tickling the back of my neck. And I'm like, what is that? I pull it and it was like, I kid you not, it was like 3.5, 4 inches long. I'm like, how did I have this there this whole time?
On the outside of your ear, kind of like on the side,
right? Right on the that.
Yeah, and as soon as you chop that thing off, then 4 more are going to appear because that's the way hair works. For some reason, I've got the same problem. I've got to trim them all the time. Otherwise, I get these little antennas sticking out of my head, and it drives me nuts. So, and then they catch the microphone on my hearing aid behind my ear. That gets real funky. So, what the hell is that noise?
Well, I had one in my nose the other day too. So this all happened within like the span of a week. I kept getting a tickle on the inside of my nose and was like, what nose hair is doing this? And I finally notice it because I'm like, okay, this one has to be it. And so I pluck it, and that sucker was like 1 inch long and must have been way back up in my nostrils. Because I felt it like up in where like my adenoids used to be. It was way up there. I was like, that's not good.
Ouch.
hopefully it continues to grow the right direction. Because then I had the nightmare thought of like, what if one grew the wrong way?
Oh, yeah. Get a hair right in your brain. That would be suck.
Like what is tickling the back of my throat? Oh, that's your nose hairs.
That'd be a little weird.
That'd be terrible. Anyway, I'm glad that the audience got to hear that. And just so you know, if you are listening to this, you are now manually breathing. Isn't that great? Isn't it crazy how you automatically breathe all the time and you don't even think about it? And now guess what? You're breathing manually.
You're wondering if you have a hair in your nose and you're breathing to try to figure out, is it there? Is that a hair? No, I don't think so.
And I hate when I don't know what to do with my tongue.
They're all probably pulling on their ears too, making sure there's no hairs on them. Trust me, if you're over 30 or getting close to 30, you've got hair on the outside of your ears. You just can't see it yet.
They're growing.
And it's nice to start off the show with some lighthearted stuff like this because, damn it, we're 5-1. Did we expect to be 5-1 in this manner? I don't think we did. I don't think we expected that if we were going to be 5-1, it was going to be in spite of special teams or in spite of an offense that can't figure out how to score points in the second half except for one game. I mean, none of us, I don't think, expected that. So it's interesting to be able to do this show and go, wow, we're 5-1. I feel so good about being 5-1. But at the same time, as only Husker fans can do, because we've all lived through the last 10 years or so of, holy cow, how are we going to figure out how to lose this game, right? They figured out how to win. So we're going to talk about what happened on Saturday. We're going to talk about what's coming up in 2 weeks when we go visit Bloomington, Indiana, go to Indiana for the second time this season. And that should be fun to preview them and take a look. And then next week's show will be just kind of a mid-season review. We'll take a little bit of time and just talk about all the games a little bit and kind of how we got to where we're at. And then we're going to open it up to you guys. We'd love to sit and have a Q&A session with everybody who either watches or listens to our show after the fact. So If you actually listen to our podcast, but you'd like to submit questions, we'll gladly take them at genredpod@gmail.com or post them on Twitter if you're following us at genredpod on Twitter. Also can follow us at genredpod on YouTube, on Facebook, and Generation Red is our podcast for the audio podcast. So got all that out of the way. 5-1, Scott. I don't know about you, but I'm seeing something in this team that we thought we saw maybe some glimpses of last year, a team moving in the right direction. This year, I see a team that's going, oh, we get it now. We're bought in. We fully understand. Defense fully understands. We don't give two craps what happens on the other two phases of the game. Our job is to handle our business. And on Saturday, business was good. Those dudes were dealing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we'll go into it a little bit more in our mid-season recap, so I'll just kind of briefly go over my initial thoughts, and it's exactly that. It seems like, based on just what I'm seeing on the field and the demeanor of our guys post-game, and especially when we get spoiled like we're being spoiled with the Chasing 3 series that they've been uploading. We really get an inside feel of what the culture is looking like. And it seems like they have moved from trying to win to knowing they're going to win. All they have to do is their job. So they're trying to do their job now, instead of being focused on the mental spaghetti that is like, oh, we're cursed. We can't win. We haven't been to a bowl game, blah, 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 blah. It seems to me like they've kind of moved past that to a degree that that we haven't ever seen before. I'm sure it's still looming. I'm sure they still have those self-depreciating thoughts because they're human, but I think it's just less now. I think that we've now seen 2 games in a row where they could have thrown their hands up and been like, this game is against us. Against Purdue, it was the refs. The refs were trying everything they could to just make our lives a living hell. And then this game, while there was some less than ideal reffing, it wasn't as egregious as I think it's been in previous games. But when it came down to execution, there just wasn't a lot of it on all 3 phases of the football, except for the defense. The defense executed incredibly well, in my opinion. And their demeanor was of a winning mentality. It doesn't matter what the scoreboard is. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many times we made it to the end zone, red zone, field goals attempted, field goals made, even though they didn't attempt any. Just that complimentary mindset just seems to be more and more apparent as this season goes on. And I'm hyped for it. There's still a lot left to be desired, but this game definitely showed me, this game plus Purdue showed me that they've got some grit. They've got some fight. They're not going to let petty grievances dictate their the result on the field. Man, I'm pretty proud of where they're at right now. I still think they could do better. I have a lot of
questions.
Questions that still need answered.
Yeah.
But all in all, like, this is a clearly improved team from last year. It is definitely improved.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I think like these are kind of our overall, you kind of went into some of your overall thoughts. For me, it sticks out immediately is the fact that the Blackshirts are back. I mean, they played like Blackshirts. There were guys that don't have Blackshirts that were in the game and were playing like Blackshirts. Vincent Shavers Jr. had a killer tackle a couple of times, filled a hole, what it looked like, and Manan guy was absolutely bottled up. Once they figured out, okay, we need to throw some bigger dudes up there, throw some different fronts at them that they're not used to seeing, and he went from 68 yards in the first quarter to like 14 for the rest of the game. So the Blackshirts are definitely back. I did see some struggle with the offensive line on pass and run block, but this is also a Schiano defense. Everybody struggles to pass and run block against the Greg Schiano team because they're just so doggone good at, number one, tackling, Number two, beating blocks, something that Nebraska really needs to work on, especially on the outside with some of those receivers, not getting beat so easily on those blocks. And then my third item was I just was excited to see Nebraska win a close game, a one-score game, while some of us in the fans, sitting in the stands, I know I did. My balloon knot was a little puckered up. I was a little nervous, especially in that last punt before Buschini unloaded that 69-yarder. I was nervous. I'm like, oh, they're coming. They're coming to get this one, and they're going to block it. They're going to score. We're not going to figure out how to win in overtime. Shit, life sucks. Why can't we just have good stuff, And then bang, he smashes one. And I'm like, whoo, this dude's a dude, And then it almost looked like Rutgers was kind of deflated, like, we're never going to drive the field on these guys, not the way that they're playing. So what used to happen to us actually happened to them. The other impression, I didn't write it down, but it's something that hit me this afternoon, is this. We played Rutgers game. Greg Schiano is the kind of coach, he doesn't like flashy offense. He doesn't really care necessarily about throwing the ball all over the yard, scoring a bunch of points, running up a bunch of yards. He doesn't care. He's happy to win a 14-7 game or a 14-10 game. Loves to drag the other team in the mud with them and just beat them up. And we did that to them instead. And there wasn't anything they could do about it. And I'm like, yes. Now, if we could just run for 200 yards a game, I'd be really happy. But those are kind of the things that struck me as I watched the game, and as I rewatched it on TV. Those were those three bullet points. There are the things that immediately stuck out to me. Blackshirts' performance, offensive line needs to work on pass and run blocking, and maybe scheme up some more inside-outside runs with Ja'Cory Barney and Jalen Lloyd and those guys. I loved that. Bonner scoring play that looked like Barty was going to get the handoff and he didn't, and it was a little trap coming around the inside. It was beautifully designed, and I love the fact that Bonner actually looked for contact on his way to the end zone. He wasn't going to dive for the corner. He was going to make a dude pay for coming up to hit him, and the dude really didn't look like he was too interested in hitting him either. So, but anyway, those are mine. That's right out of the gate. That's what I thought of the game overall.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough how relieved I feel seeing that performance on the defense, because they've been kind of up and down week to week. And it really seemed like they locked things down this week. Specifically just what Coach BA just said, the 7-play goal line stand. Yeah, it was 7 plays because we had a fourth down chance, or a third or fourth down. I think it was third down that we got that one of the bad calls. Yeah. We got one of the bad calls. At least I think that was the one, right? That was the holding that didn't really exist.
Yeah.
Anyway, 7 plays. Like, that was like reminiscent of the great defenses that we had with Ndamukong Suh and Jared Crick and Levante David and just all of those gang. Like, just throughout that whole period from 2008 to around 2012, I remember that being one of those salty defenses that could really, really put your feet in the mud if they wanted to. If they wanted to assert their will, they would. It just was such an exciting thing to see. Like you said, it was one of those moments where you're just like, well, they just got a free at least 3 points if they can manage the wind. And they just stuffed them up. Like, that was just, like, this is great. Good job, guys. So it's still, I mean, the jury is still out when it comes to what is this defense going to look like in totality, which obviously we're not going to really know until we're able to look back from the whole season and see their just overall performance. But it looks like they've taken a step in the right direction. As for our offense, this was definitely the worst performing offensive game that we've seen this year so far. Raiola looked out of sorts. I once again witnessed the lackluster effort from our wide receiver core. Like I said, I don't know if that's inexperience from our wide receiver coach, Garrett McGuire. I don't know if it's a motivational factor. I don't know if it's a conditioning factor. I'm not going to know until the end of the season when I'm able to look back at it and really get a good feel for what this wide receiver core is doing. But me as a layperson, as an armchair coach, I just see underperformance. I think that they have the ability to be a great group of skill players, but they just seem to be 50-50 with their effort. Lots of lazily run routes, not very explosive. Just kind of seemed like they almost had like a 1 out of every 4 plays where they're going to put a lot of effort in. Because Isaiah Nair, I was watching him a lot, and there was just a lot of just trotting type of route running. And then every once in a while, he would get super explosive and juke the defender out of his cleats. But Raiola's already under pressure and he's scrambling, and it was all for naught. So I would like to see those guys do better. Offensive line, like you kind of alluded to, there's still some things that need to be cleaned up there. But all in all, I don't think it's a step down from last year. I would argue we probably have a little bit better of an offensive line than last year. And that's considering that we are now on our 3rd string left tackle, our 2nd string left guard. Did we get what's his face back? Mazuka. Where is he? I didn't even pay attention.
He played on Saturday. He played some, especially on the short yardage stuff. He'd come in and they'd always run right over his side. And that's, you don't get the first. So I don't know. They're still saying he's a backup, I think. And I don't know if that's just a behavioral issue or Lutovsky's doing overall the better job between the two when it comes to what is required of a left guard. I don't know. Excuse me. I inhaled supper before I came down here. And Cantina chicken tacos kick back pretty hard if you eat them too fast from Taco Bell. So they're pretty yummy, though. That avocado verde salsa is pretty good.
Oh, yummy. Yummy. Yeah, the offensive line still needs to make an improvement next year, but I think that Raiola's got his guys where he wants them, given the circumstances, given what he was given when he arrived 3 years ago. Or no. Yeah, was it 3 years? How long has he been on staff? Was it 2 years with Frost or was it just 1?
He was hired in 2022.
Okay, so it's only been 3 years.
Season. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. But then I started to second guess. I'm like, wait, was he?
He was the only staff member retained by rule.
Yeah. So I'm not a Husker historian, guys. So don't burn me at the stake here. But and then like I can't blame Raiola. He's still a freshman. He had his game. He had his freshman game. He looked like he was getting flustered. But the one thing in retrospect that I need to adjust my perception was I think you and I were both really frustrated how many sacks he took.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, you know what? I'll take that over a YOLO ball or over a poorly, like he's in the middle of getting sacked and tries to throw it away. So then he gets intentional grounding or Lord forbid he throws a pick. You know what? I'll take the chunk yard sacks every single time if it means we don't have to lose in the turnover column. So yeah, he had like a 11.1 quarterback rating, like definitely worst performance so far.
Yeah, it was.
And those running backs just, I don't know what to do about that. I don't know if it's an offensive line thing. It's obviously an offensive line thing first and foremost, but I don't know. That room is just, it is what it is. It's not going to save us any games. I don't think it's not going to win us any games, the running back room, but we'll see what they do for the rest of the season. But and then thank God we didn't have to kick any field goals. That win was ferocious. It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, for me as a fan, great. In the stadium, yes, give me that wind. I can't imagine the 97-degree temperature
without the wind.
The wind. And it was a record-breaking October home game temperature on the field.
Yep.
So that is interesting. You know, if somebody would have told me, hey, at the beginning of October, Indiana's going to be the first Big Ten team to become bowl eligible, and you're going to be playing in 100-degree weather, I would have been like, all right, that sounds about right.
That wasn't on my 2024 football season bingo card, but it is now.
It is now. So yeah, I mean, those are my overall takes. Special teams, Brian Buschini was the only highlight of the entire special teams performance. Still got a long way to go with
2
that.
weeks, he's been good. Yeah.
And yeah, offense definitely had a bad game, but you know what? They get to go into a bye week and they get to brush that stuff off. And defense, as long as they can continue to do what we've seen them do so far in the last few games, I will be happy.
I'm with you. So with that in mind, the main takeaways from the game for me, my main takeaway is I think Ed Foley's office chair probably feels like it's the temperature of the sun. It's getting a little warm. What that means for this season is maybe a change coming, maybe a change in role. I don't know. I don't really have any insight in that. I've just heard the speculation, so I'm speculating just like everybody else that maybe there's a shift going on in the special teams. We don't know. I'm not a fan. I'm kind of like Coach BA and others who have said they're not fans of firing coaches in the middle of the year, especially assistants when they're so tied to recruiting and things like that. And the players really know them, understand them, respond to them. I can understand firing a head coach mid-season because if you need a leadership change, because they're not really doing the quote unquote nuts and bolts of the day-to-day coaching. They're coaching the coaches basically. And if they're not good at it, they're not good at it. We saw that with Frost. So, but yeah, I think his seat's a little warm right about now. God knows he's feeling the heat from people like us out here that talk about him.
Yeah.
It's not just me. There's others out there with some influence that are talking about it.
Yeah, because it's special teams, from what I've heard, is a pretty simple concept and just requires a little bit of discipline and a little bit of knowing your job, like we've kind of discussed. And I understood that last year it was going to look a little bit shoddy. It was going to be really conservative because we've basically been dealing with terrible special teams for the better half of a decade now. And so it's a systemic problem that we need to get rid of the weeds. We need to retill the fields and we need to replant, like to use a farmer's analogy. And year 2, you would expect to see some fruits of that labor. And up to this point, it seems like individual performances are highlighted, not necessarily a systemic improvement. So I agree. I think Ed Foley's chair is really hot. Maybe they need to call Bill Busch get him on the phone and be like, hey,
how uncomfortable would that be for Bill? You know, that would be so uncomfortable because he was let go and then it'd be uncomfortable for Rule too. Well, I let you go before. Maybe I was wrong. Hey, would you consider, that'd be difficult, but
that won't happen. It's not going to happen. It's just fun. It's fun to talk about it.
Yeah.
But and then my main takeaway is that they proved that they could win. I talked about it earlier, so I'm not gonna overstress it. But this was one of those games, once again, back-to-back games where looking at what we're seeing, the lack of productivity, things are just not going their way. See, now I've got the upchuck.
We're like swallowing our words or something is what's going on.
Well, I'm also drinking a LaCroix, so a carbonated beverage isn't helpful in my vocabulary flow. But so we are now 2 games back to back where going into halftime with Purdue, it's like this is a type of game that we fumble, and then we're up 14-0 for the majority of the game, and then we just kind of sputter out, and it's now up to the defense to win us a game. It's up to a stellar performance from Brian Buschini to win us a game, and they do. And I don't think in seasons past we could have had that. I think those 2 games were probably games we lose. We would find the way to lose the game. So I'm super proud of these guys making that necessary, tangible step into their their progression line, where they're now winning games that they're supposed to win. And yeah, the only game that I think they were still supposed to win that they didn't was Illinois. And it really just came down to one overtime performance, one overtime possession that they really just, I mean, there's a lot of things you could boil it down to, like this and that and the other thing. But I mean, all in all, like, we're one overtime performance away from being undefeated and bowl eligible along with Indiana. So I'm very happy. It's like I said, there's still some things I want to nitpick and tear apart and be like, let's build this better. But
build back better.
No, we will just be happy with what we have right now. I'm going to be very thankful that we are 5-1, and all we got to do is win one game out of the next 6. Can we do it, folks?
We'll see.
We'll see.
I know of one for sure I think shouldn't be too much of an issue, but yeah, I appreciate all that you had to say there. And as you were talking, something hit me, just kind of one of those light bulbs goes ping. And I was like, that goal line stand against Rutgers was very reminiscent of the goal line stand that Nebraska had back in 2023 against Illinois. After being beat up by Michigan at home, they go on the road. That's when we saw this defense and went, oh, this stuff is pretty dang salty. These guys aren't playing around. And I think that was kind of another one of those moments against Rutgers where the Blackshirts kind of put a stake in the ground and said, this is where we're living and breathing. We're going to die on this hill, and you're not crossing it. You're not getting to the top. So I appreciated that. I appreciate those parallels. My hope is that one of the parallels that will not happen in the second half of the season is that, we're sitting on 5 wins and we don't suddenly go like minus 12 in the turnover category or something like that over the last 6 games, which is kind of what happened last season. Like the last 6 games it was bad, especially the last 4. They were minus 2 per game in the last 4. And both of those turnovers in every single game, at least one of them resulted in points that ultimately ended up beating us. So those are the parallels I hope get fixed. But I don't think, all right, there's no bowl game. RIP to Coach BA. Well, don't hurt yourself, Coach. It's going to be okay. There's no bridges that you need to jump off of. We'll be okay. We're in the right direction. But yeah, Brian Buschini was my offensive MVP. Honestly, I'm kind of with you. We could probably move on to that, don't you think? Because we've got our MVP slide here, and one of them, and we do have co MVPs. We've got Brian Buschini, 5 punts, 251 yards, 50.2 yards average, and that's with one of them blocked, or 2 of them blocked. 2 inside the 20, a long of 69, and a 30-yard pass completion. Longest pass completion of the second half to Jalen Lloyd, who, if he just would have jumped a little bit harder to the left, he probably scores.
On the bingo card. Yeah. On the bingo card, who would have thought that Brian Buschini was going to have a higher passer rating than Dylan Raiola in this game?
Or that he would have a 30-yard completion and Dylan would have a 29-yard punt. Didn't have that on my bingo card either. So a lot of weird stuff that we're doing, but we're doing things. We're making winning plays. That's the point. We're making plays that help us win games. That play to Jalen Lloyd, while it did not net us any points, it netted us field position, which against a team like Rutgers, you absolutely have to win the field position battle. And Nebraska's backs were backed up to their own goal line a lot in that game. Rutgers, I think, crossed into our territory 9 times, and they came away with 7 total points. That's some pretty salty defense. And then defensive end James Williams, of course, is the other co-MVP with 5 tackles, 4 of them solo, 2 of them sacks, 2 tackles for loss. He hit the quarterback 3 times and had a total of 8 QB pressures. So he was bugging Kaliakmanis a lot in that game. So there you go. Those are our game MVPs.
And he's a sophomore.
Yes, sir.
He's a sophomore. And like, I'm sure everybody's seen it. His interviews just talking about Coach Knighton being basically his only family. And this team means the entire world to him. And And you can just see it on his face.
Yeah.
He carries the weight of the entire world on his shoulders, and having Nebraska as an outlet, somewhere where he can escape to, is just, it's a testament to what Matt Rule is doing with this culture, with this team, and is building a family dynamic. I think I said it sometime at the beginning of the season, preseason, sometime at some point, I just mentioned that it's very reminiscent of the military, that you aren't coming here to play 3, 4, maybe 5 years if you have a red shirt, or if you go to the NFL early. You're coming here to be a part of a lifelong fraternity of brothers. And it seems like James William has fully adopted that family mentality. And I'm just super excited to see what he can do here.
Yeah, he reminds me, when you watch some of the highlights, or I watched the highlights on YouTube, and those moves he was making, the spin move that he made to get those sacks. He's so smooth, he's so quick, he's long, he's got great hands, great feet. It's like watching, I don't know, a white Randy Gregory in some ways, because he's very disruptive. So I really can't wait to see how much more. If I don't want to talk about the nightmare scenario of like half of our defensive coaching staff getting poached, because there's people who've been calling last year, talking about Knight, and talking about, our former defensive backs coach was getting phone calls. So the better this team plays, the more opportunities some of our coaches will have to go elsewhere. And I don't like thinking about that, but it's a reality. So let's see here. Hey, it's time for the BA breakdown. He sent us 2 clips, one defense, one offense. I've kind of previewed both of them. I didn't watch both of them all the way through because, well, my wife's gone, and so I'm trying to keep the household from falling apart while also prepping a pod. So my wife is overseas. She's hanging out in Greece with her best friend. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime bucket list trip that she was given the opportunity to take. And I quite frankly don't blame her for not taking me, because that might have made things kind of miserable. So here we go. This is the defensive play. And I think there's 2 of them on this. So I think it's pretty cool.
This defensive play right here, we're going to get a little 2-for-1 special. I'm going to show 2 plays. The first one isn't necessarily a huge schematic thing. This is just, hey, I want to show off some boys making plays. So if we look, we're manned up, and this is important when we pay attention to the second play, but we're going to be completely manned up across the board. 0 blitz, so no help over the top. Everyone's manned up. But look, Nash Hutmacher just goes all the way across. Sorry, I keep clicking play, but the way we're stunting this a little bit and twisting this, so he's going to go behind and make a huge play, because what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Is that number 80? What are you going to do about that, buddy? You're going to do absolutely nothing. So he slows this down just enough. I know Nash doesn't make the play, but in these goal line stands, in my opinion, he made the play. This was a brilliant play call. I know Coach Rule said, Tony White made good, not great play calls. I see what he's saying, because the players went out and made the plays, but I do want to say this was a great play call. Seeing Nash Hutmacher go in a little twist technique here. But I do also want to point out Isaac Gifford with a perfect form tackle there. The way he has that thing wrapped up. And I know we do have a bunch of other black shirts there, but the way Gifford makes that play is huge. And then I'm going to show the little next play here, because I think this was amazing film study by the defensive staff, okay? So again, now they're a little bit more spread out. They're not in the heavy look, right? They're not in the heavy look, so we got different personnel out there too. We are in a complete 0 blitz here, so we're going to be manned up. Everyone's manned up. Everyone that's not manned up is basically coming, right? This was amazing film study to know that, hey, they're going to send motion. We're not going to pass any of the motion off. You're manned up. You're staying with them. There's 2 different things you can do there. I actually think the way we did it was a little bit harder to pull off, but it worked in our favor big time, because at the goal line, there is no room for error there. There's no room for error. That's why I want to point out the absolute amazing play. Look at that. The way that he takes off with that motion and reads it perfectly. He reads it like a book. He reads it like a book. And that thing is shut down. And that, I'll be real, I know this is like a quote-unquote easy tackle. Running full speed with that, you have no room for error. When you're making contact, you got, 3 yards to work with? Like, I'm telling you, if you can make the tackle, but if he drags you for 3 yards, so open field tackle to not give that up full. The way he read that was perfect to me. I love the way this happened. This was also a beautiful play call as well, defensively, because look, we got this manned up, we got that manned up, but this was beautiful because I think we knew this is where it was going because eyes were red. Because let's be real, as hard as he's coming, if this doesn't just keep going flat, if this for whatever reason goes vertical, we might be in a little bit of trouble there. But stays flat, beautiful tackle. Beautiful tackle. That was a heck of a play. I think Tony White called an amazing game. I mean, obviously, I'm not breaking news there. But this defensive stand at the goal line was things of masterpiece. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like it. It was beautiful. So I'm going to play both plays for you here. Love it. And that's just such a beautiful form tackle, the way he read that. That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Amazing.
That was beautiful, in case you missed it.
Absolutely.
That was a beautiful breakdown, Coach, just so you know. Appreciate that very, very much. I enjoy understanding a little bit more. I would have never known that was zero blitz coverage. I wouldn't know what zero blitz coverage was, and he explained it in such a way where now I can kind of look for it. Kind of look, okay, everybody's manned up. If you're not manned up with somebody, you're coming. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Coach. Here's the offensive play, which is technically our best pass of the second half that we talked about earlier.
For the offensive play of the week, let's be real. This was the offensive play of the week, and I know we're lined up in pump formation, but if you watch this game, you already know what I'm going to break down here, right? This would have worked at basically any portion of the game the way Rutgers plays this. Now, notice a few things. They're bringing pretty much everybody. They have one return man back. They're very tight here, so we stay pretty tight. But here's what I want you to pay attention to. Pay attention to these, these corners out here. They do something that is not that uncommon, okay? And they kind of stay in. They kind of keep their eyes on the punter, watching for a fake. They're not doing a ton of blocking here because Rutgers isn't trying to set up a return here. Does that make sense? They're sending so much, guys. They're putting a lot of pressure on, hey, we're going to try and block this kick, and if we don't, we're going to try and fair catch this thing or just not return it at all. That is 100% their strategy there because they're really they're not trying to block these gunners whatsoever. And that's not that's not how I would coach it, but that's not an uncommon thing. You'll see that across college football where Rutgers made a small schematic error. And I don't think maybe this was by design. Maybe it wasn't. Okay. If you're going to play that technique, you got to be past this 40 here, right? You got to be back up a little bit. We can't be all the way pressed up on the line if you're Rutgers, right? But they are, and that's okay. I don't know if this was a Matt Rule call or an Ed Foley call. Whoever has this drawn up, whoever drew this up and recognized this on film, I want to give you credit. If it's Ed Foley, I want to give Ed Foley credit. Whoever noticed it, if it's a quality control guy, I want to give him credit too. Because look at the way, if he's back up, you got more time to react. Right now, if it's a fake, in the way Buschini, takes his first few steps, all that does is hold this corner up a little bit more. That's all it does. Hold him up a little bit more because by the time he recognizes it, it's too late, running full speed. Now, if he was back here, when I see most teams do this, Frank Beamer used to do this at Virginia Tech quite a bit. you'd be back a little bit further and just gives your guys more time to react. Right now, he's already past you and running full speed. You at least have a shot if you're another 5-6 yards back. And I'm not trying to say that as like this wasn't good on our part, because it was. I'm just saying that's how I think Rutgers has messed up a little bit on that. But whoever found that on film, because they said that they've had this play in all week, and they were practicing it at halftime. I think we could have ran this at any. I think we only could have ran it once, but I think we had this at any point in the game. And I honestly think 14-0. I mean, this flipped the field. This stole a possession. So I do just want to give credit, but I had to point out like why this play worked. Beautiful throw. Jalen Lloyd, and I have to be real. God, imagine if that doesn't happen. Imagine if this gets through, man. Oh, Jalen Lloyd would still be running. He'd still be running right now. He'd still be running a couple days later. He'd still be going. But I do got to give credit because, honestly, I have to look. Obviously, this is an easier throw. You know, being right-handed, take it. You don't have to flip your hips. But for whatever reason, we had this guy open too. Like, this is just how Rutgers plays it. But obviously, you're going to throw to the side. That's such an easy throw. You know, you don't got to flip your hips. You literally just fake the punt. Your feet are already set and go. But to me, this was the offensive play in the day. Satterfield had a good day, play design. But to me, this was the play of the day. So I love it. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah. If only Jalen breaks that tackle. I mean, there's a lot of if onlys in that game. But
I think if he doesn't have that moment of hesitation, like, okay, how do I juke this guy? And he just takes a 45-degree angle to the left, just full speed. He doesn't try and do any fancy juke and just goes full speed. That's a touchdown. 100%. Yep. If he just keeps going in stride and just immediately cuts to the left and just tries to outrun the guy with his speed, which we know Jalen Lloyd has the speed to outrun basically anybody. At least keep up with the fastest guy on the team. Or the fastest guy is going to keep up with him, but he already has the advantage of being forward facing. So it was just, and what a ballsy call. Like, you're inside I mean, that's so much trust in not only your defense, but then your punter and then your receiver, you know, like just so many lines of brevity you have to have with your guys to make that kind of call in that kind of situation, where those are one of those plays that if it didn't go right, we would be irate. We would be so upset. We'd be like, why did you call that? Yeah. And it's just one of those humbling realities as an armchair coach that, like, everything's great until it doesn't work as it's planned, you know, like, right. There's a lot about Marcus Satterfield that we were irate about last year that we're basically quiet about this year because, well, it's actually working because he's got a system quarterback and he's got guys that can generally get it done with an asterisk. But it's definitely schematically much more conducive this year than it was last year. And so I just always have to remember that as a fan, that when things don't go as planned, it's because they didn't go as planned. They planned for it to work better than it did. So I just
didn't get executed.
For my own sake, I just have to talk to myself in that therapeutic way. So amazing play, ballsy play, well executed. Good job, Brian.
Yep. Thanks again, Coach. Appreciate it very much. Let's see here. Oops, wrong one. There's the slide for the through 6 games, the startling difference in the statistics between 2023 and 2024. Through 6 games, Nebraska was giving up 21 points a game. Through 6 games, they're giving up 11.3. Now it's an improvement of over a touchdown per game less that the defense is giving up. Scoring offense per game, we were scoring 19 points a game after 6 games last year. This year, we're scoring 28. That's an improvement of why I have +7 and not +9. I'll never know. I don't know what I was thinking, and I got the 7.7 was wrong too. It should be 9.7. as far as scoring defense. But anyway, who cares if I don't know how to add? The facts are the facts. Turnover margin, we were -7 at this point through 6 games last year, and we're +6 this year. That's a differential of 13 to the positive. So if that trend continues going through the rest of the season, if we can stay in that 24 to 28 points that we're scoring per game, I have confidence this defense, save for maybe one game coming up in Columbus, Ohio, I think this defense can avoid giving up a lot of points to the rest of our opponents. It's just, what is this offense going to do? That's the question. And can the special teams get passable enough to where you're not constantly worried when Buschini goes back to punt, or if they run a kicker out to try a field goal that's longer than 17 yards? So those are the numbers so far for this season that, I don't know, for me, they're striking. Like I said, I've got this out on Twitter, a lot more detailed breakdown game by game of the differences between what Nebraska did in 2023 and what they're doing in 2024. And it's getting traction every single week. There's a lot of people that are appreciative of it. So it was definitely worth the work to do. Because to me, those are the two: scoring differential and turnover margin, to me, are the two things that if you fix those, you're going to win a heck of a lot more games than you won last year. If you just fix those. So.
Yep.
Okay, so let's jump into our Indiana preview. Nebraska is going to go back to, as we said at the beginning of the show, go back to Indiana for the second time this season for their second road game. It's after the bye week, so it's October 19th. I think it's an afternoon, or no, it's an 11 a.m. kickoff, so I believe it's going to be one of those big noon games. I think the big noon guys will be there. So Urban and the company will be in Bloomington, Indiana. Indiana's 6-0, Nebraska's 5-1. And these are the stat comparisons, which if you look at these on the surface, it's kind of scary how much better Indiana is by the numbers than Nebraska is. With their passing, they're number 1 in the conference in passing at 315 yards a game. They're number 5 in the conference in rushing at 200 yards per game, and number 1 in scoring at 47 points a game for the conference. For national, they're 11th in passing, 28th in rushing, and 3rd in scoring. And then defense, they're pretty dang salty. They're every bit as salty as Nebraska is, if not better in the passing and rushing categories. The only category Nebraska is superior in besides turnover margin is scoring defense. Indiana gives up 14.8 points per game, whereas Nebraska gives up 11.3. So that's kind of and they're +3 in turnover margin, whereas Nebraska is +6. So if you're listening to this podcast after the fact and you kind of want to see what the numbers look like, go to 47 and a half minutes on our YouTube channel on this particular podcast, and you'll be able to take a look at those numbers for yourself and see where the differences are between Nebraska and Indiana. These numbers, do they scare you? Do they maybe, Scott, we've given each other our predictions. Does this change kind of your viewpoint on how you'd like to look at this game going into the 19th?
Oh, absolutely. I think that this is definitely one of our more formidable opponents, if not statistically the best team we have played so far. Yep. Colorado is improving week by week. They're definitely in the favored hunt for winning the Big 12. So as of right now, we can say that they were probably a better team than we'd even thought going into that game. And then Illinois is still a good team. They held their own against Penn State up until they didn't. And it was still a low scoring game in the grand scheme of things. But Indiana has just played consistently good football. They haven't really had much of a hiccup. They've managed to close out a game every single game, and they have an explosive run pass option offense. And if there's anything we learned from the Illinois game is that the RPO can burn us. It can burn us. And so are we going to be able to lock things up? Is our defense going to be able to perform at a high elite level and basically stifle everything that's made Indiana successful up to this point in the season? I don't know. I wouldn't want to put money on it. That's for sure. And then as for their defense, yeah, they've got a pretty salty defense. They haven't played like crazy offenses. So if there's anything that I do have hope for is that if our offense is clicking and they are having a better game, I think that bodes in our favor. But what we've seen so far this season is an offense that still has yet to get their footing through all 4 quarters.
Yep.
So right now, the odds are definitely stacked way against Nebraska statistically. And that's not even to add the fact that we're playing in Bloomington and it's an 11 o'clock game. It's the earliest game we've played so far this season. Or no, sorry, we did play Purdue. I forgot we played Purdue at 11. That was my camping weekend, so I'll chalk that off as camping brain. But there's just too many things right now that just make me kind of go, because going into the Illinois game, I was pretty much coin flip 50-50. But if I'm being honest, I think that this is definitely a game that we're going to lose 7 times out of 10. And that's just because right now, Indiana has put together a complete performance in every single game through all phases of their football, and we have yet to do that. So I think the stats match that. And I think the only thing on this, the 2 things here, the turnover margin, I will give us that. That's something I can give us. As for the scoring, we haven't really played. I mean, besides Colorado, we haven't played an explosive offensive team. So that kind of worries me. That worries me a lot. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on when you're looking at the stats, how Nebraska matches up? Is it the same? Is it like, what's your thoughts?
My thoughts, first and foremost, are the fact that Indiana really hasn't played anybody yet. And quite frankly, neither have we, save Colorado. I mean, they're improving. They're 4-1. I think they had a bye week this last week. They go to Kansas State this next week. So I'll be definitely watching that game to see how Kansas State rebounds from losing to BYU. I don't know. I've got a prediction on this game, and I'm going to stick with it because I think this defense is for real. And I think when Ty Robinson was asked about it, one of the things he said about how they handled the RPO game and defending Illinois, he said it was a disgusting performance by us. I was disgusted by the way that we played. And we saw what it looks like when Ty Robinson gets disgusted with how a team he plays in a game or how his defense plays in a game, because he's been lights out the last 2. They're going to have to play disciplined assignment football with the RPO game for sure. I don't know. To me, it's a coin flip for sure. I mean, if you look at the statistics, it's easy to say, oh yeah, they're easily a touchdown to 10 points better than Nebraska. And I believe the line opened at 10. Indiana being favored at 10, I think. I don't know.
It's only 3.5.
3.5. Okay. Well, My bad. I apologize. So who knows? Who knows? I mean, if you look at these stats, which these are the total offense and total defense, Nebraska is 381 yards per game of total offense, which is 10th in the Big Ten. They're first with 515.7. If you look at that number and that number alone, it's a tall task for Nebraska. But then you look at their opponents, and their opponents have combined for 10 wins total between the 6 opponents that they've had. Ours have combined for 14, 3 of those being 4-win teams. I don't think they have a team that Indiana has played that has won 4 games yet. So that gives me a little bit of hope, and I'm still predicting a win. So I don't know. Anything on that screen there? For those of you listening to the podcast, 53 minutes and 50 seconds is about the spot you want to get to. You can see the total defense and total offense numbers for both teams, as well as the teams that we've each played that were the best total defense and best total offense that both teams played this season so far. For us, it was Illinois was the best defense, and Rutgers was, strangely enough, the best offense. And Northwestern was the best defense for Indiana, and total offense was Maryland was best for them. So interesting. Be curious
is
to see what our
interesting.
defense could do against the Maryland attack this year, if we ever
I'd be
played them.
curious.
But so,
Well, do we want to
yeah,
make our
let's just jump
predictions?
to the predictions. You go ahead.
Yeah. So, as much as my logical side of my brain and my realist and slightly pessimistic viewpoints want me to pick Nebraska to lose this game for superstitious purposes only, and for my unbridled hope and just faith in this team to make the proper step forward. Like, it's gonna happen. We're gonna have a game this season where we play 4 complete quarters and our offense is better than we've seen, and our defense continues to do what they're doing, and our special teams makes less mistakes. I don't want to say they improve, but they just make less mistakes. We're getting into game 7. We are now rolling into the second half of the season, which is crazy to say. It always goes by so quick. And with Ohio State looming around the corner, and then we've got that slate with the 2 West Coast teams, and then the 2 Big Ten foes that we always seem to have troubles with Wisconsin and Iowa. It's like, if there's a game that's primed to have just a perfect performance, it's like, we're going there. We have the chip on our shoulder. It's our game to win. All the pressure is on Indiana to perform. They're undefeated. They're ranked. They have all of these unprecedented and historical storylines following them right now. Nebraska, up to this point, is looking good, but I would say they're underperforming in comparison to what we know they can do. And I just have this feeling that we put together a better game. We put together a more complete game. And it's going to be dirty. It's going to be messy. It's going to be mud fight, freaking fist punching. And so that's why I have Nebraska winning. I think Nebraska wins. I want them to win. Like I said, if I were to get rid of all of my emotions and all my hopes and my dreams and all of my childlike mentalities, I would pick Indiana. But I'm not going to do that this game. I'm going to have hope and faith in these guys to put together a game, and they're going to win it. And it's going to be an absolute slobber knocker of a win. I think Nebraska wins 28-23, and Indiana scores 23 points because we once again do what we did against Rutgers, and they get in our red zone. They get some explosive plays, but we just don't let them get in the end zone. And they have to kick 3 field goals. But we managed to put together some explosive plays, an offense that does their job, and we score 28 points. So 28-23, Nebraska. Don't let me down.
Don't let me down. I've got it 35-31 Nebraska, because I believe Nebraska kind of gets out of their scoring doldrums. Two of the higher point outputs that Nebraska has made this year, outside of the 2 really patsy non-conference teams, have been 28-point outputs against Colorado and against Purdue. And one of them was on the road, one of them was at home. And I'm kind of with you. I think this is the game where Nebraska puts 4 quarters together. I think you probably see 21 points in the first half, and then it seems like there's a lull in the second, but then they put another 7 points up in the third quarter, and they do kind of what they did against Rutgers. They put up 7 points per quarter in the second half, and the defense clamps down. They maybe give up 21 points in the first half, and they give up 10 in the second. So goes into half at tied, comes out with Nebraska with a 35-31 win. That's kind of what I see. They drag them into the mud a little bit in the second half, kind of like they did with Rutgers, where they just clamp down. They make some adjustments, which is something people have complained about with Tony White, especially. Does he know how to adjust his defense? Well, from 68 yards out of Monongai in the first quarter to 14 for the rest of the game, I'd say Tony White knows how to make an adjustment or two. And I know, from what I understand, John Butler was a part of that as well, helping him with some looks that he had from when he was at the Bills to help confuse offenses on the other side of the ball. So I think that tandem comes up with some ways to slow down that Cignetti offense. And 35-31. I mean, we'll still give up 31 points, but I'll take that if we're scoring 35. So that's my take on it.
That's fair. I'll take that. I'll take that all the time. And I could totally see that. Yeah. It was a hard score to pick.
Yeah,
It's very
definitely.
hard. It's very hard because there's just so many competing stat lines and competing game styles, and just like this is a hard game to really pick. And I think that's why Vegas picked the I think the spread was like 51, 53, something like that. And
the over under?
or the over under was 51, 53, and then the spread was like 3.5 points.
Okay.
And so once I picked my score and I compared it to that, I was like, I mean, I'm kind of in that ballpark, so that makes me happy.
Excuse me.
This is going to be a fun game. Regardless if we win, I think it's just going to be one of those games that, man, dude, I forgot about this. This is the thing that makes me think we're going to win it is we're unranked and they're ranked, and we need to win a ranked game. We need to beat a ranked opponent. 27 straight ranked losses. Like we're going to their
do
stadium.
it on the road. That would be cool.
That would
to go in enemy territory technically and do it on the road. The other thing that struck me, part of the reason I came up with 35-31 as well, and I meant to mention this earlier, as disgusted as Ty Robinson was with the defensive performance against Illinois, I have no doubt that Dylan Raiola is absolutely disgusted with himself in the way that he played against Rutgers. I know the wind had something to do with it. There was obvious the wind was affecting him. I think that pick that he threw directly to a guy messed with his head, and he was a little hesitant to throw some balls to some guys that were running open. And resulted in a couple of sacks where it looked like he held the ball a little too long. I don't think he does that this game. I believe Marcus Satterfield runs a good offense for a kid like Dylan Raiola, and I think he's going to scheme some fun stuff up for him. And they're going to let it all hang out. Why not? They're 5-1, right? Why not? You're not favored to win. Let's go. Let's be aggressive. Let's let it all hang out and see what the heck happens. A lot of end arounds with Jalen Lloyd and Ja'Cory Barney. Throw a bunch of swing passes to Ramir, stuff like that. Let's just let it all hang out and see what happens. 35-31, and it hangs out good.
I forgot to say this.
Go ahead.
Since you forgot something, I forgot something. One of the other reasons why I picked Nebraska to win, aside from the stats, is I want to ask this question to the listeners. If you had to pick which team, if there was a blowout, which team blows which team out? That's a weird way to say that, but which one would do it? If you had to put money, if there was a blowout, who did it? I would put money on Nebraska because I think we have the team, we have the defense to prevent them from scoring, and we have the offense to be extremely explosive. And we, like I said, we have the defense to, 95 times out of 100 prevent them from blowing us out. And I just don't like the comps between the two of them. I think Nebraska has a way higher likelihood of having a, 35-17, 35-10, something like that. I think Nebraska has a much higher chance of doing that than Indiana does. So,
And I realized there was something else I forgot to do, and that was to put a banner down on the bottom of the screen comparing it to what we picked back when we did our Roulade versus Reality show. So I apologize for that.
Pull that up really quick.
Completely space that off. Yeah, pull that up. I will go into just a couple of things as we're kind of wrapping things up while he pulls that up. Just want to say that next week we will be having a show, even though there isn't a game. We will do, for those of you who have joined us a little later than when we started, we plan to do kind of a mid-season review on what's gone on with the season so far. That'll be fairly short. And then we'd like to spend a good portion of the show next week just answering questions. So Q&A time, if you're listening to this podcast in audio form, hit us up at genredpod@gmail.com or I will put a Q&A post out on Twitter, and you can just throw your question in the comments, and we will pick a few of those, as well as anybody in the live chat that has a question about our podcast, about Scott or I, or about why we started this thing and all that fun stuff. I mean, we could refer you all the way back to some of our really, really early shows when we talked about that, but it'd be way more fun to do it currently and do it live with you guys. So be looking forward to that. We're certainly looking forward to doing that. Did you find that info?
I found mine, but I couldn't find yours because you didn't ever text it to me. So unfortunately, I won't be able to compare with yours. But I had us going
that's right.
20. This was before the whole college football world knew that Indiana was going to be bowl eligible by game 6.
Yeah.
Because I had us beating them 28-13.
Okay.
That was my score prediction.
Yeah, I
And
never
that
shared
also
that
went for the Kool-Aid.
slideshow with you. I've got the slideshow here in front of me. I'll take a look here real quick. Indiana, you had 28-13 in your reality pick. I had 21-17. So I'm even more.
You were more pessimistic for that game.
More pessimistic for that. Now I'm more optimistic now. And then for our roulade pick, I've got 28-17, and you had 28-13 as well. So there you go.
There we go.
There we go. Well, that was fun. That was great podcasting, having to look back at a Google slide presentation when I could have easily made a banner, but that's on me. We'll try to do better next week, y'all, and make sure you tune in 7 p.m. next Tuesday. You're not being followed anywhere specific like Twix or anywhere, Scott, are you? You're not.
Nope.
You haven't joined the dark side again yet, have you?
Nope. I prefer sanity and mental stability.
Mental stability, yeah. Okay, I completely understand.
Ignorance is bliss.
And if you want to see what kind of fun I like to have on Twitter, you can follow the show at GenRedPod right there. You can follow us at the same GenRedPod on Facebook and on YouTube. Generation Red is the name of our podcast in the podcast app. So the audio for this show will drop tomorrow morning on the app. So if you prefer to listen to the shows, you're more than welcome to. If you can't catch us live, you can always come back to our YouTube channel and watch us on demand, or just subscribe to the podcast so you can listen to it. We really appreciate any kind of ratings and reviews that you would like to do, either on our website at genredpod.com or on your favorite podcast app, and like and subscribe as per usual. Thanks to everyone who tuned in tonight. Thanks to the few people who left some comments. We appreciate you. The other Dave said he just caught up using 1.5 times playback. Ear hair opener. He started laughing. And agree with Buschini being the MVP and James Williams being the defensive MVP. I don't think a whole lot of people disagree with that, the other Dave, and thanks for joining us tonight. I don't believe I've seen you on the stream before, so we really appreciate you stopping. Anything else you can think of, Scott?
Nope.
Stay tuned for merch. I'll post about it on Twitter, and we will show it off here the first time when it's available right here on the live stream and tell you how to get a hold of it. So until next time, he's Scott, I'm Ken, together with Generation Red, and we are here to chronicle Nebraska's inevitable return to college football greatness, one podcast at a time, because there is no place like Nebraska.
And Iowa's corn sucks more than when you get in the shower and then have the sudden urge to poop.
I think I'll just let that one lie, so to speak, if you will. Laying pipe. Appreciate y'all watching. That's a good one. That does suck. That's for sure. Anyway,
what do you do?
What do you do? You got to dry off real quick, because there's nothing worse than sitting on a toilet when you're wet. So that's you can. You're
cleaning yourself, and then now you're not.
Yeah,
it's
just the worst.
It's an unfortunate situation.
That's just the worst, my friend. It's the worst. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. Go Big Red.
Go Big
Talk
Red.
to you later.